Once upon a time.
Well, not that long ago, about 4 months back, the BlenderTutorial course was introduced. We explored Pixar's journey a little, learning about their passion, their persistence to start despite knowing their limitations. From them, we learned to believe in ourselves and just start. We embraced 2 key principles, creativity and imagination, and pictured that Pixar has entrusted us with modeling Andy's room. Our mission? To complete that task. We began with the basics, installing Blender, navigating the viewport, moving objects, and over the course of 14 episodes, spanning roughly 5.5 hours, we modeled 12 props and gained a ton of skills along the way. Together, we've traveled a significant part of this journey, and now, after creating all 12 assets, we've arrived at the final episode of Season 1 of the BlenderTutorial From Zero to Andy's Room series. Don't worry though, this course isn't over. We're just taking a little break for 2 or 3 weeks before diving into Season 2, where we'll learn a whole bunch of exciting new stuff. Guys, I'm deeply grateful for your incredible support. Thank you so much for your comments and the positive energy you've shared throughout this journey. I truly wish the very best for all of you. Please share your thoughts about this course either here in the comments or on Discord, so I can continue improving it and make it even better. Now, the model we're creating in this episode is Andy's bed. I know, there are still 2 more models to finish, the door and the window, but we'll tackle those later when we set up the entire room scene in a future season. In this episode, like always, we'll explore some cool new things. We'll dive into Blender's physics properties to model bedsheet and pillow. This will open a whole new world in Blender for us. On top of that, we'll get a glimpse into Blender's sculpting tools. We've got a super fun and exciting episode ahead of us. So, if you're ready, head to the link in the description to download the blueprints, then come back and let's get started. Okay, before anything else, let's address a quick issue. After importing the blueprint images, if you, for example, create a cube, you're gonna notice that in the front or back views, you can't see the cube because the reference images are in the way. To fix this, as I mentioned in previous episodes, select the 2 reference images, click on this icon here, hold Alt, and change the depth setting to back. Now you're gonna be able to see the cube behind the reference images in the front and back views. Just keep this in mind as you start working. Alright. I'm going to deactivate the selectability option for the blueprints so they won't get in the way, and I'm going to delete this cube for now. Okay, now let's start by modeling the mattress. This will make things simpler because we can use its object origin as the mirror axis for other parts of the bed. Okay, I'm going to press 7 on the numpad to go to the top view, then press Shift A and add a cube, go into edit mode by pressing Tab, activating X-ray mode with Alt Z, and press S, then Y, and scale it up along the Y axis. Next, press S and then X to scale it a bit more along the X axis. I'm going to press 3 on the numpad to switch to the right view and adjust the vertices, move these ones down a bit, and these ones up. Using middle mouse and drag, I'm going to switch to perspective view, press Ctrl R to add edge loops. I'm going to scroll to add 5 edge loops here, 3 here, and 1 over there. Okay, I'm going to exit X-ray mode. Next, I'm going to add a bevel modifier, change the segments to 4, and adjust the amount. Let's go back to the right view and activate X-ray mode again to fine-tune the bevel amount. Alright, that looks good. Now, right-click and select Shader Smooth. Right-click again, go to Set Origin, and choose Origin to Geometry so the origin is centered on the object. And there you have it. The mattress is done, and from here on, we can easily use it as the mirror axis for the other parts of the bed whenever we need to. Alright, now let's move on to modeling the bed legs. First, I'm going to go to right view, press Shift A and add a cube, activate X-ray mode with Alt Z, and position the cube roughly where the leg should be. Switch to edit mode by pressing Tab, press S, and scale it down to make it smaller. Zoom in a bit, and fine-tune its position in object mode to align it better. Back in edit mode, move these vertices down, and bring these ones up. Switching to perspective view, press X, and delete this face. Return to right view, select these edges, press E to extrude, and move them up. Scale them down slightly to shape them, go back to perspective view, and press F to fill the open face. Next, I'm gonna press Ctrl 1 on the numpad to switch to the back view. Let me zoom out a bit to adjust the position of the leg in object mode from this view. Okay. Then return to perspective view, press Ctrl R, and add 3 edge loops in the middle section. Now let's refine it with a bevel modifier. Set the segments to 2, and reduce the bevel amount slightly. Go to edit mode, press A to select everything, and use Alt-Shift-Click to deselect the edge loops where you don't want the bevel. Perfect. Press N to open the side panel and adjust the mean bevel weight to 1, Okay, I'm gonna press N again to close this panel. Change the limit method of the bevel to weight. Zoom in on this section and fine-tune the bevel amount. Once that's done, right-click and enable Shade Smooth. Okay, now add a mirror modifier. Click the eyedropper tool and select this object as the mirror axis. As you can see, the mirror is working perfectly. Next, go back to the right view, press Shift-D to duplicate the leg and position the duplicate here. Switch to Edit mode, use Alt and click to select these 3 edge loops and dissolve them with Ctrl-X. Activate X-ray mode, select these vertices and move them down a bit. Then press Ctrl-R to add 3 evenly spaced edge loops to this section. And that's the lower part of the bed legs modeled. Now let's move on to creating the upper section of the legs. Switch to the right view, press Shift-A and add a UV sphere. Click here and reduce the segments to 18. Okay, I'm going to close it. Activate X-ray mode and position the sphere roughly in place. Switch to Edit mode and scale it down to make it smaller. Adjust the position in Object mode. Then go back to Edit mode to scale it slightly larger. Zoom in a bit. Press 3 on the top row of the keyboard to activate Face Select mode and select the top faces of the sphere. Press X and delete them. Now press 2 to switch to Edge Select mode. Hold Alt and click here to select this edge loop. And then press E to extrude the edges and move them upward. Then press S to scale them down. Add an edge loop in the middle here and scale it down slightly. Add another edge loop closer to the top and scale it down as well. Now hold Alt and click the middle edge loop to select it. Right click, go to Set Follow and choose Set Follow to adjust the shape. Repeat the process with other edge loops by selecting them and pressing Shift-R for repeat last operation. Just note that, as I mentioned earlier, you're going to need the EdgeFlow add-on for this step. I've included the link in the description of this episode and I've explained how to install it back in episode 10. Just feel free to check that out if you haven't set it up yet. Okay, let's continue selecting edge loops and repeating Set Follow with Shift-R to create a smooth transition and match the reference as closely as possible. Switch to Perspective View and exit X-ray mode. Okay, as you can see, the shape is coming out nicely. Okay, right-click and enable Shade Smooth. Then press Ctrl-1 to add a subdivision surface modifier with level 1 for a smoother geometry. Next, let's adjust its position. I'm going to select this object and switch to Edit mode. I'm going to add an edge loop here and another one over here. Then I'm going to select this vertex, press Shift-S and choose Cursor to Selected to place the cursor there. Now go back to Object mode, select the object, press Shift-S again, and this time choose Selection to Cursor. And as you can see, this will move the object precisely to the cursor's position. I'm going to press G to move it upward. Let's switch to the right view and adjust its position here. Alright, this part is done. It looks a bit short, so I'm going to select these vertices and just make sure you're in X-ray mode so you can select the back vertices too. Okay, I'm going to move them a bit higher and done. Now let's work on the top part. I'm going to add a cylinder and change the vertices count to 8. Move it slightly upward along the Z-axis. Then I'm going to press Tab to go into Edit mode and S to scale it down. Next, I'm going to press S, then Z to scale it along the Z-axis as well. Alright, let me zoom in. I'm going to add an edge loop in the middle and scale it up a bit for better shape. Switching to Perspective View, I'm going to exit X-ray mode. Now I'm going to add a bevel modifier. I'm going to change the segments to 2, reduce the bevel amount, and increase the angle so it doesn't affect the cylinder's side edges. Then, with Ctrl-2, I'm going to apply a subdivision surface modifier at level 2. Right-click, and let's enable Shade Smooth. Alright, now I'm going to switch to the right view, selecting this object and go to Edit mode and pick these vertices. I'm going to press E to extrude them upward and scale them down slightly. I'm going to select this edge loop, right-click, and choose Set Flow. Alright, back to Object mode, and next, I'm going to add another UV sphere. Click here, 18 vertices are enough. I'm going to go to Edit mode and scale it down. Back in Object mode, I'm going to position it on top. Then return to Edit mode to scale it up slightly. Alright, let me tweak this a bit. I'm going to move these vertices up and done. Exiting X-ray mode and enable Shade Smooth. And with Ctrl-1, I'm going to add a subdivision surface modifier at level 1. And that's it for the top part of the bed leg. Now I'm going to select all 3 objects, hold Alt, and add a mirror modifier. And since I held Alt, the modifier applies to all the selected objects simultaneously. Okay? Now one by one, I'm going to choose the mattress object as the mirror axis for each. Alright? The mirroring is working fine. Now I'm going to select these 3 objects again, press Shift-D to duplicate them, and move them here. Then I'm going to select this object, press Tab to go into edit mode, and add 2 edge loops in this section. I'm going to select this vertex, press Shift S, and choose cursor to select it. Alright, back to object mode. And now I select all of 3 objects again, press Shift S, and if I choose selection to cursor, you're going to see that because these are 3 separate objects, their positions will get messed up, and they'll all move to where the cursor is. Okay, I'm going to undo that, press Shift S again, and this time, to keep their relative positions unchanged and move them together, I'm going to choose selection to cursor, keep offset. And now you can see that the previous issue is now resolved. Alright, I'm going to switch to the right view and simply move them up a bit. Okay, that's it for modeling the bed legs. Finally, I'm going to press Shift S and choose cursor toward origin to reset the cursor to its original position. Okay, I'm going to switch to the front view, add a cube. I'm going to enable X-ray mode, move it downward, press Tab to enter edit mode, and reduce the scale along the Z-axis. Okay, let me zoom in a bit. Alright, I'm going to slightly increase its scale along the X-axis, select these vertices, and move them up a bit. Switching to the right view, I'm going to press Tab to return to object mode and position it around here. Back in edit mode, I'm going to press A, then S, and then Y to scale it along the Y-axis, zooming in a little, and I'm going to adjust its position better in object mode. Alright, switching to perspective view, I'm going to press Ctrl R and use the scroll wheel to add 7 edge loops here in the middle, and add 1 more here at the center. I'm going to add a bevel modifier, change the segments to 2, and adjust the bevel amount. Finally, I'm going to right click and enable shader smooth. Okay, switching to the front view, I'm going to enable X-ray mode, duplicate the object, and move the duplicate further down. Alright, this looks good. Now I'm going to select both objects and press Ctrl J to join them together. I'm going to add a mirror modifier and set the mattress as the mirror axis. I'm going to disable X-axis and enable the Y-axis instead. Alright, that's it for modeling this part of the bed. Let's continue and move on to modeling the footboard. Okay, I'm going to switch to front view. I'm going to add a plane, press R, then X and type 90 and press enter. I'm going to enable X-ray mode, press Tab to enter edit mode, and add an edge loop here at the center. I'm going to select these vertices and delete them. I'm going to move these vertices upward. Let me zoom in a bit. Okay. Now I'm going to move these vertices down. I'm going to select these vertices and position them roughly here. This vertex goes over here. Okay, I'm going to add a mirror modifier. Then insert 3 edge loops into this area. Okay, I'm going to also add a subdivision surface modifier, set the viewport levels to 2, and enable this option to only show the final subdivision result for easier vertex adjustments. Now I'm going to select these vertices and move them up. I'm going to adjust the position of this vertex more precisely and move these vertices up slightly, adjust this vertex, and fine-tune the placement of each vertex based on the reference. Okay, for now we're done with this section and we'll return to it later. I go back and readjust this vertex, and then the others as well, fine-tuning their positions. Alright, this looks good. Switching to the right view, I enter object mode, and since the object is still a plane, it's hard to see it properly from this angle, so I'm going to switch to perspective view, move the object, and roughly position it here. I go back to the right view and enter edit mode. Okay, its position looks fine for now. Switching to perspective view, I'm going to exit X-ray mode, add a solidify modifier, and place it below the mirror modifier. I'm going to increase its thickness a bit. Next, I'm going to add a bevel modifier, scroll down in the stack, and place it below the solidify modifier. I'm going to reduce the bevel amount and set the segments to 2. Okay, now you can see this sharp area here, and to fix this issue, I'm going to increase the angle value in the bevel modifier so it doesn't affect the curved parts of the model. Alright? If I zoom in here a bit, you're going to see that increasing the angle in the bevel modifier has affected this area too. To fix this, I'm going to switch to the front view, and here simply, I'm going to move this vertex slightly to the side. Now you can see that the bevel no longer affects it. Great. Now switching to the right view, I move the object slightly to the side in object mode and adjust the thickness in the solidify modifier. Okay, I'm going to switch to perspective view and we can make this object smoother. So let me collapse these modifier for now. Alright, I'm going to increase the subdivision surface level by 1 to make the object even smoother. You can see that it looks much better now. Okay, then I'm going to right click and enable shader smooth. I feel like it's a bit too thick, so I'm going to reduce the thickness in the solidify modifier a little. Okay, switching back to the right view, and I'm going to adjust its position. Alright, this looks good now. Okay, I'm going to select this object, switching to the right view, press Shift D to duplicate it, and move it over here. Okay, slightly higher. Now I'm going to go to the back view, and for now, I'm going to hide this object by pressing H, and let's move on to creating the headboard of the bed. I'm going to select it, go into Edit mode, and enable X-ray mode. Alright, I'm going to select these vertices and move them down. Let me zoom in a bit. I'm going to also select these vertices and move them further down. And this one is slightly lower as well. These vertices go even lower. And this vertex comes here. I move this vertex up. Bring this one down. And this one a little lower. This one moves further down. Alright. I'm going to adjust this vertex position a bit, bring this one higher, and tweak this one's position again. This one also needs a slight adjustment. You know what? Since the curve in this section is a bit too steep, I think we need another edge loop here. So I'm going to add an edge loop in the center and then tidy up the spacing between the edges. I'm going to select this edge, right click and choose Set Flow. Then I'm going to select the rest of the edges and press Shift R to apply the same adjustment to them. Okay. I'm going to continue tweaking the positions of the vertices. I'm going to move this one a bit higher, this one slightly lower, and this one further down. This one moves just a little lower, and I'm going to select each vertex one by one and adjust their positions. Okay, to fix this issue in this area, I'm going to select this vertex and move it to make this section sharper. Okay, I make a slight adjustment to this one as well, and that's it. Let me refine this vertex position a little more. Alright. I'm going to tweak this one as well. Alright. As you can see, this section turned out really well and our bed is slowly becoming more and more attractive. Okay. Now I'm going to go into Edit mode and add another edge loop in the center here. And that's it for now. Now let's model this crescent-shaped hole in the center. First I'm going to apply the mirror modifier. Let me zoom in a bit. Okay. I'm going to apply these modifiers as well. And for the subdivision surface modifier, if I hover my cursor here in the viewport and press Ctrl W to see the wireframe, and this is a custom hotkey I've set up, but you can toggle the wireframe from this section and then turn off optimum display option here. I can see the actual topology density of the mesh. Currently, you can see that the topology is very dense, so I'm going to reduce the viewport levels by 1 and then apply it. This way, it'll be much easier to model the hole in the center. Alright, let's get to modeling this part. Switching to the back view, I'm going to enable X-ray mode, press Shift A and add a cylinder. I'm going to change the segments to 18. Then I'm going to press R for rotation, then X, type 90 and press Enter. I'm going to move it into position. In Edit mode, I'm going to scale it down. Let me zoom in and adjust its position in object mode according to the reference. Okay, I'm going to scale it up a bit more in Edit mode. Back to object mode. I'm going to press Shift D to duplicate it and move it here. Alright, switching to perspective view, I'm going to press Tab to enter Edit mode, press S, and scale it slightly along the Y-axis. Now back in object mode, I'm going to hold Shift and select this object, then press Ctrl and the minus key on the numpad to use the Boolean modifier. You can see the Boolean modifier has been added, and just a reminder, make sure you've installed the Bool tool add-on from the Edit, Preferences, and here in Get Extensions, you can search for Bool tools and make sure you have installed it. Okay, moving on, I'm going to apply the Boolean modifier. I'm going to select this object and delete it. Then I'm going to select this object and position it here. Okay. Now we need to subtract this mesh from the main mesh using the Boolean modifier again. But before that, it's a good idea to clean up any extra edges to keep the mesh neat. For example, we can simply dissolve this edge using Ctrl X, since, as you can see, removing it doesn't significantly affect the shape. However, if we try to dissolve this edge, you're going to notice it changes the overall shape noticeably. So it's better to leave this edge alone because the change to the shape is too significant. The next thing to note is the presence of sharp edges like these two, which can often cause issues when using Boolean, so it's better to soften them a bit. For this, I'm going to press Ctrl B and add a segment in the middle and use bevel to soften these sharp edges. As you can see, this edge is still a bit sharp, so I'm going to right click and here select Set Flow. I'm going to click here, and in the set flow setting, I'm going to reduce the mix value slightly to make this edge less flat. Okay, that looks better now. I'm going to select this and then this one and press Ctrl and minus key to apply the Boolean modifier. I'm going to apply the Boolean modifier here, select the cube and delete it. Now we need to work a bit on the topology of our object. For example, if I add a subdivision surface here, you're going to notice that it works well on the most parts of the object, except the part where we used Boolean. The reason for this is the messed up topology in that part of the object, so I'm going to delete the subdivision surface, and now we need to clean up this part. Before we do that, let's clear up the mesh a bit to make our job easier. I'm going to hold Alt and click here, then press X and delete these faces. Now if I move my mouse here and press L to select linked elements, you're going to see that the entire object gets selected. This is because both sides of the object are still connected through these internal faces. And if I press Ctrl R, I can't even add an edge loop in the middle to clean up that side and separate the two parts. In fact, the messed up topology here is preventing us from doing that. But we don't give up, let's fix it. I'm going to start by selecting these internal faces, and while holding Shift, I'm going to click on each of these faces to add them to the selection. I'm going to click here. I'm going to select this one, and this one. Okay, now I'm going to press P and select Selection to separate these internal faces from the main object. Okay, the previous issue should be fixed now, so let's go into Edit mode. I'm going to bring my mouse here and press L, and yes, now you can see that the other side of the object is selected, so I'm going to press X and delete it. Now, let's move on to this object. I'm going to select it and press the forward slash and the numpad to go into local view. If I go into edit mode and press 1 on the top row of the keyboard to enable vertex select mode, you're going to see a set of vertices here that aren't connected by any edges. So we need to delete them. Now, we can either select them one by one and dissolve them with Ctrl X, or we can press A, then X, and select limited dissolve. As you can see this way, all the vertices that aren't connected to any edges will be easily dissolved. Perfect. Now let's clean up the mesh as much as possible to ensure there are no extra edges. For example, I can select this one and dissolve it, and as you can see, this doesn't change the overall shape of the object much. Okay, let me check if there are any extra edges that we can delete. Here is an edge that can easily be dissolved. And I think we are done with the extra edges now. Alright, now if I press Ctrl R, you can see that I can now add an edge loop in the middle. The magic of good topology, right? Okay, I'm going to delete these faces, return to object mode, and exit local view with the forward slash. Now, to make it easier for us, let's delete the surrounding faces here to make things even simpler. So, I'm going to select each of these faces one by one. I'm using Shift key to add these to my selection, and I'm going to delete them. I think it looks much better now. Let me delete these two as well. Okay, now we're good. Before we join these, I want to use the same technique I used in the wall shelf modeling episode. Remember that? Okay, so I'm going to select this object and add a solidify modifier. And as you can see, the edges of this area now have an inset, and later we can easily bevel these edges. Very good. Here I'm going to increase the thickness a little bit. I'm going to enable the only rim option, so these meshes get deleted. And then I'm going to apply the solidify modifier. Okay, I'm going to also select these faces and delete them. Now I'm going to select these two and press Ctrl J to join them. Okay, now let's go to back view. Let me zoom in a bit. Alright, now we just need to fill the gap between the two objects with some faces. I'm going to go into edit mode, select this edge and then this one, and press F to fill it. Now I'm going to select this edge and press F several times to fill in these areas. Okay, you can see that we can't just keep pressing F and fill everything this way. For some parts we need to spend a bit more time. So let me undo several steps with Ctrl Z. Alright, now I'm going to select these two edges and press F. I'm going to select this vertex and then this one and press M and choose add last to merge them. Okay, I'm going to select this edge, press F and F again. I'm going to select this vertex and then this one, press M, merge at last. I'm going to select this edge and press F. Okay, for this part, we can add one edge loop here. Then I'm going to select this edge and press F. Again F, F. And I'm going to easily fill these areas with this method. Okay, for this part, I'm going to select these edges and press F. select this one, press F, and okay, let me undo this. It's better to add another edge loop here. Now I'm gonna select this, press F, and again F. To fill this section, keep in mind that you can't add an edge loop vertically here because it will mess up the curve on top of the object. So here you can just press F once and press F again. And you can also move this vertex a little and place it around here. Alright. Now, note that the topology isn't perfect right now, and since we're working on a flat surface, we don't need to spend more time making it perfect. As long as the edges around the hole have clean topology, everything should be fine and no problems will arise. Okay, let's test this out. I'm going to go to Perspective View and add a Subdivision Surface modifier with Ctrl 1. And as you can see, it's looking great and there are no issues with the shading. Okay, I'm going to right click and enable Shader Smooth for it as well. And that's it. You can see we easily modeled the hole in the middle of the headboard. Now let's add a mirror modifier. I'm going to turn off the X-axis and enable the Z-axis for the mirror. You can see that they are separated, so we need to fix the object origin. I'm going to select this vertex, press Shift S and choose cursor to selected. Then I'm going to go back to object mode, right click, go to set origin and choose origin to 3D cursor. Now as you can see, the mirror is working correctly. Okay, I'm going to bring the mirror modifier above the subdivision surface and finally I'm going to apply it. Alright, now let's move on to beveling the edge of this part. I'm going to select this edge loop with Alt, zoom in a little. I'm going to press Ctrl B and add 2 edge loops in the middle and then click. And as you can see, we can easily bevel this part. Okay, let me undo that. I'm going to turn off the subdivision for now. And again, I'm going to press Ctrl B here. But this time, I'm going to add only 1 edge loop in the middle because I think it looks sharper and better this way. Alright, it's looking better. Okay, if you want, you can also increase the subdivision level to make it smoother. Alright, that's the modeling for this part done. And as you can see, it turned out pretty clean and nice. Now I'm going to bring subdivision back to 1. And as I mentioned before, the topology around this part could have taken more time, but really it isn't necessary here. And you can see that we've achieved the result we wanted. Okay. Now I'm going to press Shift S and choose cursor toward origin to bring the cursor back to its default position. Alright, I'm going to also press Alt H to bring back the object I had hidden. That's done. We've made it through a big part of the process, so let's continue. I'm going to go to the front view, select these 3 objects, and press H to hide them. Let me zoom in a bit. Alright, I'm going to add a UV sphere, change the segments to 18, go into Edit mode, enable X-ray mode, press S and scale it down. Then I'm going to go back to Object mode, move it up here, scale it down a little more in Edit mode. I'm going to go back to Object mode and enable Shader Smooth. I'm going to duplicate it and move it down here, then scale it down a little. I'm going to duplicate it again and place it here. In Edit mode, I'm going to press 3 on the top row of the keyboard to enable Face Select mode. Select these faces and delete them. Then I'm going to select this edge loop, extrude it, and bring it down here. I'm going to also scale it down a little. Now I'm going to add a cylinder, change the vertices to 8, go into Edit mode, and scale it down. Then I'm going to return to Object mode and position it up here. Scale it down, and then scale it down along the Z-axis. Finally, I'm going to adjust its position again in Object mode. Alright, let me go to Perspective View and zoom back a little so I can see my object. Okay, now I'm going to add a bevel modifier, change the segments to 2, reduce the bevel amount, and increase the angle so it doesn't affect the edges around it. I'm going to press Ctrl 2 to add a subdivision surface modifier with a value of 2. Right-click and enable Shader Smooth for it as well. This subject can still be smoother, so I'm going to select it and go into Edit mode, select this edge loop, press G twice to slide it and move it a bit lower. I'm going to select this, right-click and choose Set Flow. Then I'm going to select this and press Shift R to repeat it, and do the same for this edge loop as well. As you can see, this part looks a little smoother now. Okay, I'm going to zoom back a bit. I'm going to select this and this object and press Ctrl J to join them together. I'm going to select this one and press Ctrl 1 to add a subdivision surface to make it even smoother. Alright, let me check. It can even be improved, so I'm going to select this edge loop and this one, and then press Ctrl X to dissolve them. As you can see now it's better. Now I'm going to select this, right click and choose Set Flow, and then I'm going to select this one as well and press Shift R. Alright, now you can see it looks much smoother. Okay, I'm going to select them all, go to the top view, zoom back a bit, press G and move them here to place them. Then I'm going to go to the front view, zoom in, press Shift D to duplicate them, move them here, rotate them a little, enable X-ray mode and adjust their position better. Okay, I'm going to go into edit mode, select these vertices, press G, then Z and press Z once more to move them along the axis where the object have rotated. Alright, I'm going to go back to object mode, duplicate them again, move them here, and rotate them a little, and just make sure to always perform the rotation and movement in object mode. Alright, now I'm going to go into edit mode, press G, then press Z twice, and adjust the position of these vertices. Finally, I'm going to return to object mode, duplicate them once again, and move them here, rotate them a little, and make final adjustments in object mode. Alright, go into edit mode, press G and Z twice, and adjust these vertices as well. Alright, I'm going to go back to object mode, select these 3 objects, press Ctrl J to join them, then select these 3 and press Ctrl J again, and do the same for these spheres to join them together. Okay, now I'm going to select all of them, hold Alt and add a mirror modifier. I'm going to pick the eyedropper tool and select this object as the mirror axis. I'm going to then select this object, collapse these modifiers, bring the mirror modifier up. I'm going to pick the eyedropper tool and select this object as the axis again. Now I'm going to select this object as well and set this object as its mirror axis again. Then I'm going to move the mirror modifier up in the stack. Alright, that's done. Just double check that the mirror modifier is placed at the top for all of these objects. Okay, everything looks good. Now I'm going to select all of these objects, go to the top view, zoom back a bit, press Shift D to duplicate them and move them here. Now I'm going to go to the back view, zoom in a bit, enable X-ray mode, select these vertices, move them up, select these, press G, press Z twice to move them upwards. Then I'm going to select these, press G, then Z twice again and move them higher as well. Finally, I'm going to select these, press G and Z twice to adjust them upwards again. Alright, that's done. Now I'm going to press Alt-H to bring back the object I had hidden. Alright, now let's move on to modeling the side rails of the bed. I'm going to add a cube, go to the right view, move it down a bit, enter edit mode, scale it smaller, press S and scale it more along the Y-axis. Then go to the front view, return to object mode, and move it into place on this side. Alright, the position looks good. Now I'm going to add a bevel modifier, change the segments to 2, reduce the bevel amount, and zoom in a bit. Right click and enable Shade Smooth. I'm going to go into edit mode, press Ctrl R, and add several edge loops in the middle for it. Alright, that's done. Now I'm going to add a mirror modifier, and select the bed object as the mirror axis, and bring the mirror modifier up, placing it above the bevel modifier. Alright, now we've finally reached the part where we model the bedsheet. To model the bedsheet, we need to get familiar with a new section in Blender called Physics. This section is a bit more advanced and really deserves its own separate course, but for now, we're just going to familiarize ourselves with the part we need at the very basic and simple level. It's a really fun and interesting feature, so let's dive in. I'm going to go to the top view, add a plane, activate X-ray mode, and enter edit mode. I'm going to move these vertices here, zoom back a bit, press A to select all, and scale it along the X-axis. I'm going to select these vertices and move them to this point. Alright, now I'm going to go to the perspective view, and it's time to increase the topology of this plane so that when we simulate the fabric, it can deform easily like a real cloth. So I'm going to press A, right click, and click on Subdivide. I'm going to click on this section and increase the number of cuts to 80. The denser the mesh, the more realistic simulation will be. However, keep in mind that this comes at the cost of a slower simulation and increased resource usage. Okay, now I'm going to select this edge loop, go to the right view, zoom in a bit, press E to extrude, and extrude a few more times to position the vertices like this. Alright, now let's go back to perspective view. Notice that it's better if the faces are square, and we actually want a regular square distribution. As you can see, these faces are roughly square, so I'm going to add a few more edge loops to the parts that were extruded, and making sure the faces end up close to square. Alright, that's done. Now I'm going to return to object mode, enable Shade Smooth. Okay, now it's time to move on to the exciting physics section. I'm going to click on this icon in the Properties panel, and here's the option we're looking for. It's practically glowing. Yes, cloth. So I'm going to click on it, and as you can see, nothing significant has happened yet. To see the result, we need to head to a window that animators often use, the timeline. That's right, simulations rely on the timeline. If we click the play icon here, which the shortcut is spacebar, you're going to notice the plane that we created starts moving downward. Okay, I'm going to press space again to stop the simulation, and as you saw, it passed through the bed object and kept moving without interacting with the object it collided with. The simulation continues until the timeline reaches the last frame. Right now, the timeline is set to 250 frames, meaning the simulation will run for 250 frames. Now I'm going to click on this icon to return to the first frame in the timeline, and the plane will return to its original position. Please keep in mind that every time you make any changes to the object or the physics settings, you should always go back to the first frame and start the simulation from there to avoid any issues. So please remember this, it's very important. Okay, now we need to tell Blender which objects the cloth should interact with. Fortunately, this is an easy task. I'm going to select this object and in the Physics Properties section, click on Collision. Of course, we want the cloth to interact with this object too, so I'm going to enable collision for this object as well, and that's it. We don't need to enable collision for the other objects for now, just these two are enough for the simulation to work. Alright, now if I click on play, this magical and exciting things happens. Pretty awesome, right? The only problem is that it's sliding a bit to the side, so I'm going to pause the simulation and go back to the first frame. Now let's fix the sliding issue with the cloth. This might sound strange, but to fix this problem, we need to work on the physics or collision settings for the mattress object, not the bed sheet. So to fix this, we need to define that this object isn't a slippery surface. We can simply do this in the physics properties under soft body and cloth. The collision settings are divided into two sections. One is particle, but we won't be working with that here, and the other is soft body and cloth. So here, we simply need to increase the friction value. The higher the friction, the less slippery the surface becomes. For example, I'm going to set the friction value to 50, and now if I hit play, you're going to see that the bedsheet stays in place without sliding. That's great. Now I'm going to pause the simulation, and the next issue is the mesh intersection that's happening over here. So I'm going to go back to the first frame, and this time I'm going to select the bedsheet object. If you look at the cloth settings in the physics tab, you're going to see there are a lot of settings. Don't worry, it's actually great news for artists. More options means more control to bring out your creativity and manage every detail of your project. But now, we'll keep it simple. Just scroll down to the bottom, and here we have the collision section. There are two options, object collision and self-collision. Right now, we don't need to mess with object collision, so I'm going to enable self-collision here, and this means that the bedsheet will now react when it collides with itself. Now, after enabling this option, I'm going to click play, and as you can see, we no longer have mesh intersections. The object now reacts when it collides with itself. Okay, I won't pause here so that the simulation continues and the bedsheet takes a better form. Right now, let's pause the simulation by pressing space. Okay, here we can move the time navigator to the frame that you think looks best for the bedsheet's form. Keep in mind that the highlighted blue line in the timeline means that the simulation was only done in these frames. Now, for example, I'm going to go to this frame, and if I go to the modifiers section, you're going to see that the cloth has been added as a modifier here. So it means that I can click apply on this modifier to freeze the current frame I'm on. Just remember, after applying, all the previous simulation frames will be cleared. Okay, I'm going to apply it, and now, if I move the time navigator, you're going to see that the simulation is gone, and the fabric is frozen. Alright, that's done. Now I'm going to press Ctrl 1 to add a subdivision surface modifier, and to make it more interesting, I'm going to also add a solidify modifier. Okay, I'm going to increase the thickness a bit, and look how cool the bedsheet looks now. Looks great. Okay, now let's continue. I'm going to switch to the right view and activate X-ray mode. The height of the blanket is good now, but I think this part could be a little shorter. So for now, I'm going to turn off these modifiers, go into edit mode, and activate X-ray mode again. You can see that we can shorten this part up to here. So I'm going to exit X-ray mode, hold Alt, click on this part, and delete these faces. I'm going to bring my cursor here, press L, and delete these faces too. I'm going to turn the modifiers back on. Let me check it in perspective. I think I've made it too short. That's okay, undo is there for a reason. This time I'm going to select these faces and delete them, And I'm going to select this part again and delete them as well. Now I'm going to turn the modifiers back on, and that looks much better. Next, let's fix this part too. I'm going to select it and go into edit mode, select these faces and delete them. Here I'm going to press L and delete those as well. And now it's looking better and better. Now there's just this part that's sticking out of the object. There are several ways to fix this, but I want to take this opportunity to introduce you to Blender's Sculpt mode, which is such an amazing feature. It's super easy. Just click on the Sculpt tab at the top, and suddenly you're in a whole new workspace. At first glance, it might feel a bit overwhelming, but trust me, there's nothing to worry about. Sculpt mode in Blender is not just powerful, it's incredibly fun and creative. Once you get the hang of it, you'll probably want to spend hours exploring all it has to offer. This feature truly deserves a dedicated course of its own, but for now, we're just dipping our toes into this exciting new world. In this section, you can see that we have a wide variety of brushes available for sculpting. By scrolling your mouse wheel, you can view even more brushes here. You can choose any of them and click and drag on the mesh to see what effect each brush has. If you'd like, you can click here and drag your mouse to the right or even further to change how these brushes are displayed. In this mode, you can even see the names of the brushes. Now I'm going to click here and drag it slightly to the left. In this case, all the brushes will be arranged differently and you won't see their names. If I drag it a bit more to the left, it will return to the default layout, which really comes down to personal preference. Alright, for now from this long list of brushes, we only need one, the cloth brush. I'm going to select it and you can see that the cursor changes to this shape. And now you can click and hold the mouse button, then move the mouse to see the effect. For example, I'm going to click and drag like this to add wrinkles. As you can see, with just one brush, you can achieve some really cool results. I'm just simply clicking and dragging. Okay, at the top here, you can access the brush settings. For example, we have radius, which changes the size of the brush, and strength, which increases or decreases the brush's effect. You can also use the shortcut keys for these. If you press F, you can change the brush size by moving the mouse left and right, and the amount of change will appear here at the top. Wait, you might be thinking, didn't we use the F key for the fill command before? Well, you're absolutely right. But there's a small yet important difference here. If you're in edit mode and select an edge, pressing F will execute the fill command. However, when you switch the workspace to a sculpting, you automatically enter sculpt mode, and in this mode, the F key is used to change the brush size. So make sure you don't mix these two up. Alright, I've increased the brush size with F, and now you can see that the larger the size, the more it naturally affects a bigger area of the object. Now I'm going to press F again and reduce the brush size. Okay, now if I press Shift F, I can adjust the strength of the brush by moving the mouse left and right. And you can see the amount of change both in the center and up here. Now as you can see, the brush's effective strength is at its maximum. Okay, I'm going to undo, press Shift F again, and reduce the brush strength. Also from this section, which is in the tool properties, you can access more settings for the selected brush. For example, one of the commonly used properties for the cloth brush is deformation, where you can choose different ways the brush affects the object. For example, if you select push, you're going to see that it pushes the object inward. Or if I select grab and click and drag here, you're going to see that it has this effect. Alright, let's use this grab setting to fix the parts of the bedsheet that are sticking out. For instance, I'm going to click and drag here to push the protruding parts inward, like this. Now, let's go to the other side of the bed and use this brush to push this part inward too. I'm going to press F and make the brush size bigger, then pull this part inward. I'm going to reduce the size again and pull a little of this part outward. Okay, looks good. I'm going to move some of these parts inward and pull a bit of this part out. Okay, as you can see, with just this simple use of the sculpt brush, we can make some cool changes. Now I'm going to go back to the layout workspace, and that's it for the bedsheet modeling. Now let's move on to modeling the pillow. I'm going to switch to the top view and add a plane. I'm going to enable X-ray mode and move the plane over here. I'm going to go into edit mode and scale it down along the X-axis, then scale it down along the Y-axis as well. I'm going to switch to perspective view I'm going to bring it up slightly, zoom in a bit, go back to edit mode, right click and choose subdivide. Here I'm going to set the number of cuts to 50. This topology should be good. Let me zoom in a little. Now I'm going to press E and extrude it slightly upwards. Alright, next we need to merge the edges around this object so that they look like the edges of a real pillow sewn together. After that, we can use the physics tab to inflate it and make it puff up. Sounds cool, right? To do this, we first need to select the edges around the object. So I'm going to go to the select menu and here choose sharp edges. Alright, now as you can see, all the edges around this object are selected. Alright, to merge them, we can use merge by distance because the distance between these vertices is equal, so they would all merge together. Instead, we want only the selected vertices to merge. So for that, we just need to enable the auto merge vertices option at the top here. Okay, for example, if I go into vertex select mode, enable this option, select a vertex and press G twice to move and slide it, I can drag it to another vertex and when I click, you'll see they automatically merge. Okay, now I'm going to undo that. Auto merge is enabled and I need to select the edges again. So from the select menu, I'm going to choose sharp edges again. I'm going to hold shift and deselect this vertex. And now I just need to move these vertices closer together. So for this, I'm going to press S and choose the Z axis. And instead of moving the mouse, I'm going to type 0 and press enter. Now you can see that all the selected vertices have merged and we have a pillow with its edges sewn together, ready to be filled. Next, let's go to our new and exciting physics tab. I'm going to click on cloth and scroll down in the settings. And here I'm going to enable the pressure option. Now if I click play, you're going to see that the pillow falls onto the bed, but remains flat and uninflated, as if the pressure didn't do anything. But don't jump to conclusion just yet. Earlier, we enabled collision for this object, which is why the pillow didn't pass through it, but we didn't enable collision for the bedsheet, so I'm going to enable collision for the bedsheet as well. Now let's go back to the pillow and solve the problem. I'm going to scroll again to find the pressure setting. Okay, here, we just need to increase the pressure value. You can see that it was set to 0, so nothing happened. I'm going to change it to 2 and click play again. You're going to see that not much has changed. So I'm going to pause the simulation and go back to the first frame. And this time, I'm going to increase the pressure to 10. Now when I press play, yes, now you can see that the pillow has inflated and it reacts well with the object it touches. Okay, I'm going to let the simulation run a bit more to improve the pillow's shape. Alright, I'm going to pause it, go to the modifier properties and apply the cloth modifier. There we go. Our lovely pillow is ready. Okay, I'm going to right click and enable shader smooth for it and add a subdivision surface modifier by pressing Ctrl 1. If you'd like, you can go to the sculpt workspace, select the cloth brush and choose the deformation style that you want. And you can then work on the pillow and give it a little massage. Alright, I'm going to return to the layout workspace and that's it for modeling our cute and friendly pillow. Oh, and before I forget, I should remind you that after using auto merge, make sure to turn it off. Leaving it on could cause issues later in your workflow, so better safe than sorry. Okay everyone, that's it for modeling Andy's bed. We've finally reached the end of Season 1 of the Blender Story course. I truly congratulate you all for making it this far and completing the mission that was given to you by Pixar. This is a huge milestone, guys. Don't underestimate it. Take pride in your progress and celebrate it. Why not, right? Lastly, don't forget, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this course in the comments, and it would really help me prepare even better content for the next seasons. Remember, every one of your comments is super valuable and helps us build a better and cooler community day by day. If you haven't joined our Discord yet, make sure to do so and ask your questions there. I'd love to see your practice and projects posted there as well, so we can enjoy each other's work and track our progress together. Stay successful and victorious, and I'll see you in the next season. Take care everyone.